Do you remember the last time you've used one of these large box televisions with rounded edges and these colorful looking video cables? My guess is that it's probably been a while. Most televisions we have nowadays are much flatter, wider, and they may look crystal clear if you're using something that was built with these high definition displays in mind. Problems arise when you try using older devices like your old Xbox, PlayStation, or Wii console. And to tell you the truth, they just weren't designed for it. That's why when we try using these old systems on these newer display technologies, they just look really bad. The image looks very blurry, the color is washed out, and there's even input lag from the analog to digital conversion that every flat screen has to do for the signal to be shown. This might work fine for VHS and even DVD players, but definitely not for game consoles. Of course, the quality issue can be avoided using a different video cable like component cables. But the chances are this may or may not fix the input lag issue. Have you also noticed, when playing an old game or watching an old movie or TV show on a new television, that there's borders on the sides? That's because whatever you're playing was not rendered for widescreen televisions. If you're watching a DVD, you can easily tell which screen format it's rendered in by the words full screen, which mean 4:3, or widescreen, which means 16:9. So why use CRT TVs instead? Well, to put it simply, CRTs will take the video signal and do nothing with it other than output it. There's no image processing, no conversion, and this means less input lag. And this is why many hardcore retro gamers prefer CRTs when playing retro titles, specifically from the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. Most game consoles and other devices during this time period shipped with composite video cables. The yellow cable transfers video, and the red and white cables transfer stereo audio. The resolutions these consoles output at the time did work fine on this single yellow cable. It can carry a maximum resolution of 480i, which is the resolution that most PlayStation 2 games output at. The newest system I have that supports composite video is the Nintendo Wii U. It supports the same composite video cable from the original Wii, but the Wii U released in 2012 when HD TVs were very popular, and this console was specifically designed for those HD TVs. That's why it included an HDMI port. So when you use this console on a CRT with composite video, it doesn't look good. Text can appear too small and unreadable. The system does have a 4:3 option, but it's just letterboxed 16:9. This can make things too small. That's why we stick to older consoles when playing on CRTs. To make things even crazier, some games can only be played on CRTs and nothing else, specifically the light gun games. This is based off other reports that I've heard online. I don't have any light guns myself, so if anyone wants to correct me on this, feel free to do so in the comments. The CRT I have here is a 20-inch Philips Magnavox set manufactured in 1999, back when the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 were the current consoles. The back of the television has the power cable and RF connector. Yeah, this TV does not have composite built in, so that's why I use an RF modulator box like this, which takes a composite input and transmits it over RF channels 3 or 4 depending on what it's set to. These can easily be found online for not much. I'll post a few here. An RF modulator is only needed if your television does not have a composite input. If it does have a composite input, just use that. There's no need to have a modulator at that point. Now, I originally wanted to do this video on a 13-inch CRT from Zenith, and the reason why is because that one had an actual composite input. But when I got home to test it out, I noticed it had a serious issue. The screen appeared to be cropped, top and bottom. You can actually see in these images here. I did look through the settings to see if there was some kind of zoom option or anything that could actually make the screen fit correctly, but I came up nothing. And then one of my viewers suggested that it was because of something called vertical collapse. I couldn't find a service menu even though I did have the remote, and in the end, I decided not to use this television anyways and to just use a different one. So yeah, here we are. Also, depending on which CRT you pick up, it may have a different type of video connector. It might have multiple, in fact. And I'll list them out from worst quality to best quality. Those are RF, composite, S-video, and component. Every CRT will have RF, and most CRTs will have composite. Some may have S-video, and component is usually reserved for higher-end CRTs. Mostly newer Sony Trinitron displays, which are pretty expensive. But for most CRTs, especially smaller ones that are around 13 inches or even 20 inches, composite and S-video will be fine. So what games can you play on a CRT? I hooked up my Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 2, and 3 to the set to try out some games and some other media. I started off with a few PS2 games, and I did notice that there was a lot of signal noise, which is very common for composite video signals. As you can tell from this footage, signal noise and other types of analog interference can have a huge effect on quality. The television set doesn't process anything and just gives its raw video signal. In return, you get basically zero input lag, which can put you at a competitive advantage for multiplayer games, if that's possible. Now, most of the signal noise isn't really easy to tell if you're sitting a bit far back from the TV, but get too close, and then it becomes much more noticeable. My next option was PlayStation 1 games. Most of these games output at around 240p, and when played on this CRT, it actually looks sharp. I also noticed that there's less noise on the display, probably because these games run at a much lower resolution. So, PS1 games, they look great. PS2 games, maybe. And just out of curiosity, I even went as far as hooking up the PS3 and loading up GTA 5. And yeah, I'm not gonna say it looks bad or anything, but it doesn't look too great. This game was specifically designed to run at 720p on HD TVs, and putting it on a CRT, well, I guess it's playable. Of course, CRTs aren't limited to only playing retro games. There's a lot of media that you can find online or in physical form that were purely designed for CRTs, or to be more accurate, rendered in a 4:3 aspect ratio. You can go online or to your local media shop and purchase DVDs in this format, and when played, they fit perfectly on the screen, unlike streaming services which rarely give this option. For example, Netflix has One Piece, but it's an HD remastered version in cropped widescreen, which chops off the top and bottom portions of the screen. The DVD and Crunchyroll versions are presented in its original aspect ratio, which fit perfectly on this screen. Now, there are a few negatives to having a CRT. One of them is power consumption. These things drain lots of power compared to an LCD or the more efficient OLED displays. Another disadvantage is that these things are really heavy. Seriously, you do not want to be carrying these things around, and carrying this thing up to my room was enough to, well, it didn't exactly kill me, but it's just heavy. Another possible issue is sound quality, which will vary depending on which CRT you pick, and this can easily be avoided by having your devices go to an external sound source. The final issue is actually finding a good CRT. eBay is one of the worst places to look for a CRT. These things are often advertised as retro gaming TVs when clearly they're not just for retro gaming, and people will mark these things up like crazy. Now, sometimes if you're on eBay, you can find one available for local pickup, but that requires you to basically drive out and go get it, and they can't ship it to you. If you are looking to buy online, there are definitely better stores out there like Mercari, OfferUp, and Facebook Marketplace. Anyways, that will be it for this video. If you did find this video helpful, please leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this, and I'll see you guys later.